Hey, Dear Run Parents, welcome back to the Dear Run Parents podcast, Refocus. I am so glad that you are joining us today for episode 3, and it's all about fatherhood. So I wrangled in the dads of the Dear Run staff, and that is Pastor Ike, Pastor Peter, and Pastor Quentin. And we're talking about what does it mean to be a dad. Pastor Peter talked about his own dad. We all talk about being a father in the different stages of parenthood, all the way from newborn to having young adults in your house. And then to end, we end with how to take care of yourselves as dads. So if you're a dad listening, you're in for a treat. If you're a mom listening, you're definitely in for a treat. I enjoyed this episode myself. So let's let the dads take it away. Well, welcome, friends. I'm glad you're here with me. If you heard in our introduction, we have the dads on staff at the church here. And for our listeners this morning, could you please introduce yourself and let us know kind of what stage of parenting you're at, what age your kids are at, so the listeners know.
Okay. My name is Peter Clausen, and my children are between the ages of, I have 4 of them, so I often forget their ages. It's 12. Trinity's our oldest, all the way down to Jade, which she is 6. Hope I'm right. I'm sorry if I'm not.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think I'm right too.
Ask Annie. My name is Ike Unger, and I have kids between the ages of 16 and 19.
I'm Quentin Unger, and I have 4 boys. I'm married to Christina for 15 years, and our oldest son is 11, and our youngest son is 6. And so we had them all close together, and it is never boring at our house.
I would believe that. And to get the environment right, I think the best way to do this would be starting with a dad joke. So any takers on that?
I'll start. My milk is the fastest liquid in the world. It's so fast that you can't even see it when it's pasteurized.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Some of these may take me a while.
Okay.
Okay, I looked this one up because I don't have any off the top of my head other than when I'm in the moment. But so what do a tick and the Eiffel Tower have in common? They are both a parasite.
Okay.
Parasite.
I get it. Nice.
So if you see a crime in an Apple store, does that make you an eyewitness?
Oh, yep, that clicked. Nice. Well, thank you for those. So dads, take notes. Here's 3 that you can use.
Yeah.
Those are like our credentials. Like, what are your good dad jokes? Okay, you're good. You're good.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
You got this. So I was looking at a definition of fatherhood because I wanted to do this podcast for dads and for moms just to see what dads do. And obviously moms see it every day. But I was hoping to find a wonderful description, a definition that would just encapsulate it all. And dictionary.com, their definition was a person that enters fatherhood when they become a father. Well, obviously, yes. And that can cover everybody. So, Peter, would you mind expanding on fatherhood and maybe even talk about like your own dad and how that played into your life and as a role as a father too?
Okay. Yeah, I think I would expand on that a little bit by saying that fatherhood is also about journeying alongside children, preparing them for the world with a loving atmosphere and just kind of this idea of journeying alongside them, building relationships, and preparing them for the world. And I think that in many ways, my dad, he's taught me a lot about what that looks like by being very intentional about keeping a connection with me. He would often take me out to, his little diner we had in town called Blondie's, where we would go, he'd get me a hot chocolate, he would drink coffee, and he would just let me ramble on about things that I was learning in school and probably boring him to death. But he would often take me on many adventures, right? He would take me, to the rocks at the beach, and we would run across there, take me biking. He's never played football before, but he learned how to throw football just so he could do that with me. And so just the sacrifice, all the sacrifices that a father makes in order to build that connection, and then with that connection, kind of like preparing them for the world and showing them what it means to draw close to Christ and to rely on Him and His strength. I think for me, seeing that through the way that my father led me, and also now how it translates to me, is to me the more accurate picture of what fatherhood means.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Thanks for sharing. So our Dear Run Parents podcast is called Refocus because we want to bring parents back to the most important thing, which is leading our kids to become fully devoted followers of Christ. And so as dads, what are you doing right now intentionally with your kids to make sure that they are taking that path to become fully devoted followers of Christ?
Yeah, my wife and I have a phrase in our house, and I think it sums up our parenting philosophy, and it's parenting for 18. And the whole idea of that philosophy is that we want to prepare our boys so when they're moving out, it's not like when they're 18, we're going like, well, pack your bags, you're out of here. That's not what we're necessarily saying. But by the time they go into adulthood, we want them to be prepared. We want them to have the tools that they need to become responsible employees or maybe even employers, have their own faith. So a faith that will be their own, that they can express, one that they have chosen for themselves, and give them the tools to be able to do that. And then also to be men who are able to lead their relationships and their families. And so we recognize at 18 or whatever kind of age we put on it, it's not necessarily like an exact date, but the whole idea behind it is to prepare them for a life of responsible adulthood. And that translates really well into our mission statement because as a church, we are hoping to lead people so that they can learn to follow Jesus by themselves and then also lead others. And so I think those two philosophies are really interconnected.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for us, similar. Like we, way back already, we came up with a kind of a parenting goal for our kids, and and that I think has been a good thing for us to guide us. And our goal, if I can remember it now, is to raise healthy, independent, God-fearing adults. And so similar to what Quentin was just saying. So I think one of the things that we're doing intentionally right now is, because of the age that our kids are in, we're trying to listen constructively. We're trying to listen emphatically, just to make sure that our kids feel that they have a voice, because I think that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but I think that right now, often in their age, they're trying to find their voice in things, and I don't want to be the kind of dad that tells them what that voice is, because then it becomes, if it doesn't work out for them, it's my fault. So one of the things that we've done very intentionally over the years already, especially as they kind of entered into high school, is to just explain that to me. Back that up. And we'll have those kind of conversations. And obviously, faith-wise, modeling for them. Developing my own. Maria and I both, our own character and our own integrity and our community mindedness and all those kind of things, so that in those moments when our kids don't have their own voice that makes sense to them, they can look at adults, and we're not the only adults. We have other, these guys up here and yourself, and youth leaders and people like that, who they can then look at and model after them when they don't. And so I think some of the other intentional things we've tried to do with them is just with mentors and those sort of things, having healthy adults in their lives, and that I think is paying dividends, because sometimes it's like, they may not understand something about themselves, and then we'll say something and someone else will speak into their lives. It could even be a grandparent, speak into their lives, and all of a sudden it's like, and a combination of all these different healthy voices suddenly helps them find, and that doesn't mean that we agree on everything, but listening with that mindset in place, teaching them, like even just last night we had a conversation about something, and it was like, explain that. And then when they tried, all of a sudden you could see, it's like, oh, that sounds different when I have to answer questions I wasn't asking myself. And so I think that can be but if I would have just gone in there right away and said, no, I think it would just either shut them down, and most likely they would have just gone and found the voices that would have affirmed them. And so that, again, it doesn't always work, but it sounds good in the podcast here, so.
Yeah, Annie, if I can just
Yeah,
add
go ahead.
a thought. One of the books that really impacted my wife and I when we were, blessed with our firstborn. I think as parents we see that little baby, and if it doesn't hit you when you're in the hospital, it does the minute you come home, and you're just overwhelmed. What am I going to do with this human? And I read a book. It's called Shepherding a Child's Heart, and I forget the first name. It's by Mr. Tripp, I think it is. And the whole idea, the premise behind the book, and it's really informed how we look at raising children, is this whole idea of discipling children. So when you are raising children, you're not training them in the same way you would a dog or a cat. You're not training them to do tasks. You're training into them character. You're training into them the tools they need to follow Jesus. And you're shepherding, you're coming alongside, and you're preparing them and walking with them. And so that was a thing, we just kind of stumbled across it in a small group at church, and it has really guided how we raise our boys.
That's really good. Yeah, because eventually they do move out of your house. And I think that's very encouraging as me as a parent of preschoolers to be like, yeah, like we do need to start from parenting and telling them how to do things to going into mentoring them to do it themselves. I love that. So being up here or in this space, it may sound like we have it all together, but I just wanted you guys to share, like, what are you wrestling right now with being a dad? And anybody can speak to this. It could be something small, it could be something big.
Yeah, I'll start. One of the things for me, and I think for Maria and I think maybe for Maria in some ways a little bit more, but for me for sure is letting go. I'm in an interesting place where I have to, and I think every stage, when you have the little ones, there's a point where you need to let them go for their first bike ride. And then you need to let them, at some point go into a store unaccompanied. And it's like there's this ongoing timeline of, let go here, because if you're doing everything for them, then that stunts growth and stuff like that. But for us right now, it's letting go. And, one thing that it's been so easy for me to do from the pulpit and during baptism classes and stuff like that, and telling, you need to make your faith your own. And then suddenly it's your own kids. And there are times where it's like you have to back off, and you do actually have to let them find some of that stuff themselves. And again, you may not always like it, but at the same time, it's that letting go so that you can have that engaging conversation. That has been a hard one for me because I like answers. And then the other thing that's been a struggle for me is stumbling into my own insecurities. And also struggling through some of your own things that when they're little, you can easily hide. Like if you have, I struggle with anxiety sometimes. When I had anxiety attacks and stuff like that when my kids were small, they'd never picked up on it. Now suddenly I have my kids asking me, "You okay, Dad? Is it okay if I ask you this?" What makes you incredibly insecure? It makes you, if you have to really wrestle with it, that you don't feel, like you're failing your kids. And so those are some things that I think learning to struggle through your own struggles with older kids when they're picking up on it. Those are just a couple things, insecurities and just letting go. And I could go on. But there's other things like just sometimes I think, and maybe this is every parent, you ask yourself like, man, was that the right decision?
Yeah.
And, and those kind of things. And that kind of stems back again to some of the insecurities. So.
Yeah, I think one of the struggles that I have is, like I mentioned before, I've never been a dad before. What I mean with that is I haven't had a trial run, right? I know none of our kids are blessed with our parents being having their trial run, their practice run, and then they have kids.
Especially our first, right?
Yeah, and so one of the struggles that I have is as conversations come up in our family, as our boys are getting older, it is reasonable to expect and reasonable to push your children to accept greater and greater responsibility. And so I often wonder, what is age appropriate? Is it reasonable for me to expect my second or my third or even my oldest to do certain things and take up responsibility? And is it reasonable for me to expect him to do it with a reasonable amount of success? And then also, as conversations come up, and some of the conversations around ethics and morality and politics and just talking about a Christian worldview, what is age appropriate? You know, my third son is really good at asking profound, hard questions. And he's 8, and his questions could lead to an answer that's for a 25-year-old hard to process, or an 8-year-old. And so, you know, from the pulpit, I got answers for stuff like this. But when you have children who are seeking and it's age appropriate, it is often a struggle for me to know what kind of answers do I get, what do I expect of them, and that type of thing. So,
Well, that's, I think, part of what now, as you know, some of those insecurities and stuff like that, is the information that our kids have access to now. You know, like sometimes like politics and stuff like that. Just to date myself here, when I was 19 years old, I hardly knew who our prime minister was. You know, and now kids, young kids, are aware of, you know, what party their favorite celebrity votes for, their favorite artist votes for, because that kind of information is just so much more known. And so, you know, to speak into some of those things, I bet you parents are being asked questions now that, yeah, I don't think it belongs to a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old, you know, but they're asking it because they're exposed to it. And so with that comes I think, yeah, Quentin's dead on, like that age appropriateness. And sometimes that's at our door without us wanting to actually have it there. And so there's some plus sides to it, but it can create a lot of unknown, because if you answer it, if you know, speak about it too much, it just kind of seems to open up more and more and more. And so, yeah, that's a good topic.
Yeah, and like with that, it's very difficult to know like at what when is the proper age for these kids to start to process some of these things. Like kids that are younger and younger are being exposed to like different social aspects that they've never, that at least me growing up, we never tackled those things, or different roles of different people in society and all these things. And so it's for a lot of parents, even for us, we struggle with like, do we send our kids to public school? Right now, with all the things that are going on, public school, what is the right option for for our family, for homeschooling? Can we do it? What's best in this situation? Or a Christian school, because there's pros and cons across the board. And like for us as parents, like the stage that we're at right now is like, we understand that in different scenarios, they're being exposed to different things at different times. And knowing how to facilitate all those things for us, has been a real big struggle for my wife and I, Maria. And so, but yeah, those are all things that we're all thinking about at any age, right?
Yeah, because kids go from like black and white thinking to like struggling with the gray. And when do you add that in, right? Yeah.
Well, and I think with that too, and this is maybe aging me a little bit more, but then you have a lot of these things that we used to present to our kids, and I've seen this over the years as a youth pastor, and then all of a sudden they get to that certain age and they're like, why? You know, that doesn't make sense. Why would you? And it's like, oh, you know. And so I think sometimes as a dad, I know for myself, I want to answer, I want to fix, I want to give a one-liner that's going to be like, wow, you know. And then you finish that one-liner with your kid, and they're looking at you going like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, you know, because so-and-so. So I think some of those kind of things as a father leading in this time, I think it's just very, very, you know, even though we struggle with it, I think it's important for us as fathers to recognize we don't have to necessarily go in there to fix it, but we have to be willing to engage, you know, in these struggles and in these areas of uncertainty. And then I think as appropriate with the age, inviting our kids into that discussion and valuing their input, you know. I think those are all, but yeah, struggles for sure.
It's good. So there are different age groups, I'm sure, of dads listening, of parenting at different stages. So would someone like to give a little bit of advice or encouragement to the dads listening who are in the preschool phase? So these are dads with kids of newborns to maybe age 3 or 4. And I know you guys are all out of that stage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's been so long, I'll pass off to one of you guys.
Yeah, just know, fathers, that this too shall pass. It's so very interesting. When you're parenting in that age group, you keep thinking to yourself, when is this going to end? Where's the light at the end of this tunnel? Because it can be very overwhelming, especially if you have other children too, right? But now that we are past that, you often forget, but then you connect with other families with kids in the age group, and it hits you hard. You're like, oh, I don't have anyone, and you find yourself missing it. And I know we did this series, called "It's Just a Phase."
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Yeah, exactly right. And I think that rings so true. Kind of embrace that time, embrace the chaos. And fathers, at this age, the children are very much dependent on the mother, right? And so you're kind of left waiting for them to be able to throw a ball and to play hide and go seek. But in this time, enter into that as much as you can. Obviously, breastfeeding is not going to be your thing, but jump into there and be a pro at changing diapers. That's it. That's what it was. Goodness. So, be a pro at changing diapers. Be a pro at giving your wife the night off. I remember the first time I did it, I failed. Our daughter Trinity would not stop crying. And I just broke. I called her up. She was out, hanging out with her girlfriends. And I'm like, my words were, honey, I am a broken man. Oh, no. Come home. Come home, please. Obviously, the next time it got better and better and better. And then I had a handle on it. But you have to make that effort. This is a team thing. Don't leave your wife high and dry, and just be there, because it will happen fast when they will be out of that stage. And you'll be like, wow, that was fast. And so embrace the chaos, and just think in terms of teamwork with your wife. I think that will really bring value to that stage.
I think the thing that I would say is your kids are going to be okay. We, like I said, we come home from the hospital, or even in the hospital, we hold that precious newborn, and they're 6 to 8 pounds or whatever they are, and they seem so extremely fragile. And then in our minds, we think of all the ways that we can fail our children and all the ways that everything could go wrong. But, God has given all children to amateurs, and our children will be okay. And our children don't need anybody else than their dad. We are the dads to the children that God has given us. And like Peter said, engaging where you can, and your kids are going to be okay. And so I think some of the things that we did as new parents, we look back and we chuckle. And then, the new parents that we see in our church and in our friends groups, they're all really trying hard with that first one not to mess it up. And the good news is, in some ways we will mess up, but the better news is that we will succeed more than we fail. And so I think that as you grow up, there's beauty in every stage, and so embrace it. There's times when especially for moms, it doesn't seem like they get to shower when they want to. They don't get to go out with their friends when they want to. And a husband, sometimes we just stand there, we don't know what to do. And I think one of the best gifts that we can give our children at that age, when they're toddlers, is to love their moms. And I really appreciate what Peter said, is to provide care to the moms, and by doing that, we often give the best care we can to our children as well.
Totally, I would agree with that, being a mom. That is, seriously, that the times that Herman has stepped up and took the night, and even if the kid is crying, don't worry, Annie, just go. Those have been so precious to me, and yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things, this is maybe in line with what obviously has been said, but one thing that I enjoyed doing, and I think it was meaningful, it was just touching and holding and doing things that as a parent now of older kids, they wouldn't want me to do anymore, like telling them stories. Even when they're really singing songs, oh my goodness, I could sing "The Devil Has a Devil is a Sly Old Fox" right now if I wanted to. And there's hundreds of these songs that I know, and we would sing them over and over and over. I think little things like that sometimes we can so easily dismiss them as nothing, but it develops a relationship. It develops a rapport that you're willing to lie in their bed or on their floor and sing them these songs until they're asleep, and then you do that ninja walk out of the room so that they don't wake up, But I think sometimes those little things, we just dismiss them as like, I put my kids to bed. My goodness, what an opportunity to tell them about your day, obviously age appropriate, but to talk about yourself to them and let them get to know you other than just what they see. And sometimes, when you have a little moments like that, you will see their little eyes are like, they're hunting for information, and sometimes just a little nugget of information, it's so valuable. And so, I think those are some good times, just being able to. You were like a rock star back then when you would sing. They just like, sing it again. So
Now, not so much.
My 2-year-old tells me to stop singing, so I don't know about that. Yeah, so I think we will go on to our elementary phase. So these are kids ages 6 to 10. What advice or encouragement would you give to dads in that phase?
Piece of advice would be that don't underestimate your children's intelligence. As dads, we sometimes, think we can get away with stuff. We think that maybe perhaps only our wife sees the holes in our integrity. And I remember my oldest was probably 6 years old. And we tried to be wise with how much screen time our kids use. And he comes to me and he's exasperated. He's upset. He's like, "Dad, why do you get to be on your phone and I don't get to be on my tablet?" And no complicated explanation at that point would do justice. And so our children have, as they are growing up, especially in this age, they have a very black and white sense of morality. And so as parents, we need to be very mindful of that. And so I know it's a kind of a cliche saying, but our walk must match our talk. And so when we fail, I think one of the best things that we can do is to apologize and to be real with our children. I mess up all the time, but one of the greatest things that we can do, and I'm not saying that, as parents, when we mess up, it's actually a good thing. But when we mess up and we go and apologize to our children, that is also a teaching moment. That's also preparing them for 18 and preparing them to lead people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. In that, it models that we need to be people of repentance, regardless of where we are in the authority structure, regardless of where we are in our walks with Christ, to be humble people that apologize. And then just an encouragement, the greatest gift that I am finding I am able to give my boys is to invite them in to what I'm doing and allow them to help in their own way. And we just moved to a new property, and so we have been working very hard on various things in our backyard. And each of my boys has taken an interest in helping. And at times, the help lasts like 3 minutes, and then other times it lasts all day. And it also makes the project last longer. It does. We have to be okay with that. But the thing is, our boys want to spend time with us, and if you have girls, I don't know what that would be like, dads, but some of that affection and that time is the same for all children. And so our children don't want a different dad. They want the dad that they have to be engaged with them. And if that means that the child is 2 or 12, they desire the same thing. They need to know that their dad is there. They need to know that their dad loves them and that their dad wants to spend time with them. We sometimes say in our house, we love somebody and we also like somebody. And so our children need to know that their dad likes them as well and not just loves them.
Yeah, if I could even build off of that a little bit, modeling for them what, the head knowledge computes to, like, in real life in terms of, like, a faith. Like, we do our best to sing the Bible songs and the devil's a sly old fox and all these things. But I think even at this age, there's so much value in showing them what that looks like. For instance, like praying for people. Like we always ask our kids at nighttime, who can we pray for? And the amount, like sometimes we'll be like, let's pray for this person. I'm like, oh, really, why? Last year they lost their dad. And I had even forgotten that. I'm like, wow. Just the like you said, the intelligence of like this age group is sometimes shocking. And so sometimes we go to a family, like being a pastor, we're doing ministry. And what I usually tell our kids is, hey, listen, we're coming here to be a blessing to them. So, and we're a Clausen team. It's not just Pastor Peter going in there. I need you guys to help me out and bless the socks off of these kids, build relationships and show them. And so then they get the sense of mission as well. And so they feel like they're included in this, to make their faith tangible. So when we leave, be like, hey, do you guys think we were a blessing? And they're like, yeah, I think we did. This is what I did. I encouraged them in this area. I'm like, yeah, And so I think that it contextualizes that faith thing, and I think for that age group, it's very important to see that their faith isn't just something that we do when we go to church, when we go to youth, and the things that we learn, but something that we can actually be hands and feet to. Mm-hmm. And I think another thing I just want to throw out there too is I think even in this age group, I've got a few girls and I've got a boy. And to show them what a healthy relationship looks like, especially with your wife. Be affectionate with your wife in front of them. Show them what respect looks like. Because whether you know it or not, they are paying attention, and that will compute, I think, through their life as well. And I think that investing in your marriage will bring value to your parents in every single stage. And so I think that that's something that's very valuable, especially at that age.
Yeah, I definitely think that, like what both of you have said is so true. Like this, like that they feel valued. As like Quentin said, that the project may take longer, and sometimes helping may not be helping, but it is that they are there with you, and that whether it's making a visit to someone's house or working on the yard or something else. I know way back when I was speaking at a junior youth camp. I took Simon with me, and he was just, I think, 5, 6, I don't know, I don't remember. And so his official job was to bring me my Bible right before a talk. And I wanted him to know that he wasn't there just for nothing. And so I said, like, that's your job. So I don't have to, carry my Bible around with me and all those kind of things. You're going to always bring me my Bible right before I need to talk. And he would, faithfully would. And then one night at one of the talks, quite a few kids gave their life to Christ. So later on, when I was because he would give me my Bible and go back to the tent or the camper, and then later on I was talking to him and I said, Simon, I just want you to know that, and I'll make up a number because I don't remember, like 4 kids gave their life to Christ tonight. And he was like, oh, cool. And I said, I want you to know that you were part of that because you brought me my Bible. That's right. And like it's the and so it can be in multiple different places, like, hey, that little the chicken coop or whatever is sitting there because we built that, or exactly. Those people were blessed because and I think it's about teaching them that they matter, because I think that when they learn that they matter, they begin to evaluate what they do through a wider lens than just their own interest. That the things I do impact others, family, finances, all kinds of things like that. So I think that that's a wonderful aspect to cherish and to invest in.
Yeah, because kids, I think, start out very egotistical, like it's all about themselves. And then when they see that their actions are impacting others, and it really opens up their worldview for sure. And so that really leads us into the next phase of preteens. And some of you have preteens. Your oldest is going into the preteen phase, and teens and young adults. Would you want to speak to that a little bit? I think Ike has the most experience, but.
So, rule number 1, don't panic. Which camera should I say that to? Do not panic. I think these are, have been, and continue to be some of the richest times that we've had as a family. And with that, I always say, to every strength there's a weakness. With that has also been some of the scariest. Where we have had such rich conversations about something, and then at the same time, we end up like, oh, why are they thinking some of those things, and like, who taught them that, and stuff like that. But at the same time, don't panic. We could spend 2 podcasts just on this age bracket, but few things I will say as a father that I learned, and I'm glad I learned, and that is to just value this age, because it is an age where so much is happening. And do not misinterpret what they are doing. Do not misinterpret their behavior. So sometimes, a 12-year-old may be, struggling through something, and it's emotional development that's happening that they don't understand. Like, why do I feel this all of a sudden when they've gone 12 years and not felt anything about it, and suddenly now they're feeling things, they're wrestling with things. Well, if you now immediately just interpret that as, disbehaving and stuff like that, or misbehaving or disobedience, you're missing an opportunity to explain, what's happening. So you might want to sometimes just look at them and say, like, okay, this is new to me too, coming from you. What do you think is going on here? And I have 1 son and 2 girls, and different, even between the 2 girls, very different responses sometimes to certain things. And so, again, like we've probably talked about and could have talked about more in other areas, every single child has to be dealt with individually and worked through and understood individually. And so then the other thing that comes with that is physical development. And this was one that, I think we often make fun of, especially teenage boys and their voices and, and hair and all those kind of things, that often we want to just kind of like ha 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 about. But at the same time, you realize for them, it's not always a laughing matter, because they're not sure about certain things. And so as an adult, I think we want to be careful that we don't like, oh, you'll grow out of it, because, well, that growing out of it can be life-changing, because body image suddenly matters now, weight matters now, body types and all those kind of things, identity and sexuality, and my goodness, there's so much that's all in that conversation. So I think in that you want to very often take time to explain. And not to get too personal here, but I know one time with our girls, I just wanted to be very clear with them that, well, now as you're growing and things like that, and as you're getting older, like, how do we hug? How do I, we used to wrestle a lot as a family. We, Maria not so much, but as a dad, I loved wrestling with my kids, and not just stopping cold turkey, but to explain to them, some of this has to change now because we're getting older. And so, but not just cutting it out, then adding in, something different, so that it's not like, oh, now we have one less thing we can do, So there's a lot of different things that come with that. And then obviously there's the cognitive development. I think, dads, we have to learn to be comfortable with hard conversations and not ending every conversation. It's not like, oh, let's talk about, identity, and let's talk about environment, and we're going to package it all in this conversation, and now we've had that talk, or even the sex talk, never make it a talk. It's an ongoing conversation, something that I think is just very, very important. And in that conversations, Dad, just be okay with not knowing and letting your kids learn how to wrestle with questions, and don't pretend you have answers when you don't. It goes back to, I think one of you said about they're too smart for that. If they're too smart at that age, ages 8 and whatever, by the time they're 15, 16 years old, they know whether or not, all those things. And so those are just a few things, but I think, like I said, we could talk about a lot of other things, but those would be some big things. Don't panic. Don't get flustered. Don't get angry. Give them time. They still respect you. Develop your own character. Make sure you've invested in all that. And then lean in on all those years that you've had together with them. Again, one more thing.
Go for it.
So one thing that we've talked about sometimes is, literally even saying something, and we may have termed it differently, but I'll say it. I need to come up with a line so that it makes sense. So again, in our house, later on, if our kids are watching this, you never said that. But the line that I would probably have leaned in somewhere would have sounded something like this. Like, we've established trust, right? So all these years, you've trusted me. Can I use some of that trust now? All these years, I've been a safe father. I've been an honest father. Why would I now suddenly tell you a whopper? Or why would I now suddenly have a very selfish motive? And so these previous years, like you're investing into this time now where you can have these conversations with them, and you can kind of use some of that credibility that you've built with them to say, hey, we need to now have this conversation about something, and we don't agree, and I think that you may not see some of these things the way you should, but that doesn't make me right or you wrong, but let's have a conversation. And so I'm also a dad who's very, very comfortable with my kids disagreeing with me. Basically our only rule at home is respect, And so, because I also know that what they believe now, they're not going to believe necessarily when they're older, but they have to go through this time of discovering. And those can all be, they can keep you up at night. Just wondering, well, should I have taken a stronger stand there? Did I give them too much rope to figure things out on their own? But man, we pray a lot. We trust God. If we trusted Him when they were a minute old, with our child, we need to trust them when they have questions and are struggling, with their own issues. We have to trust God with them just as much in those moments.
Yeah, and sort of to even just build off of that a little bit as well, like as dads, I think it's very important that we open up these conversations by inviting questions. A lot of dads may be intimidated, and like even what Pastor Ike was saying, like it's okay to not have all the answers, but then you say, hey, you know what? I don't quite understand that. Let's go find out the answers together. Because that will bring more value, right? And so just to put a lot of stock in allowing them a safe space to ask questions and having that be like a precedent in your family. And even you asking questions, sometimes like we need to gauge where they're at, and you say, hey, how was your day? Did anything happen today that shocked you? And opening it, because sometimes that can lead to other deeper things, but yeah, actually, this is something that my friend said that happened to them. And so, wrestling with all those things, but I think that we have to lay the groundwork to create a safe space for our kids to have these conversations with us, whether it be about sex, whether it be about what's happening in the world, and kind of like walking them through that stuff. And I think it is a very important thing that we don't always have to have the answers to the questions that they're asking, but at least that they would know that we would be seeking out those answers together. I think that that sets a very positive and atmosphere in your home.
One other thing I was going to mention really quickly and I forgot, and that is faith. This, I think, is one of those areas that, as a Christian, you want to pass that on to your children, and you want to invite your kids into a deep personal relationship with Jesus. So I would say to fathers, in those moments when they are asking or questioning everything, let them, and I don't say that facetiously, but just let them ask the questions, because they are not dismissing. They are inquiring. And I know sometimes when kids are asking, like, how do we know? You ask we would almost dismiss it as like, well, yeah, we've been asked this. Why would a good God allow bad things to happen? Well, as adults, we don't have an answer to that question. Yeah. So in their mind, if we just make it like, oh, that's a cookie cutter answer to that, I think very often they dismiss that as either you're not safe to ask, you're not smart enough to ask, or those kind of things, and then they'll go and look other ways. So very often in a situation like when we've had those conversations, it's like, well, let's discover that together. Let's ask the same questions. Or other times, you may want to just engage in that conversation with them. But I think as a parent and as a father, I've talked to lots of dads over the years, and they are just, they're panicking. I think my daughter or I think my son is dismissing their faith. And I have never been at a place in with our kids where I felt like that's what was happening. But I think I want to encourage fathers, do not panic, because when we panic, we give really bad advice. Or we may say things that don't make sense. I don't think you want to be too open and say, well, I wrestle with that same thing. I sometimes wonder if there is even a God, like you want to. But I think all of us at some point or another have had a faith crisis that we needed someone to walk us through with. And I think we have that privilege to do that with our kids. And so obviously we talk at our house, and again, this is terminology that I would use now to explain, but there's like the capital T and the small t. There's a capital truth and small truth. There are some things that are like, this is not up for question.
Right.
And then there are other things that are like, yeah, the Bible isn't clear. Like tattoos. The Bible isn't as clear on some of that stuff as, piercings and stuff like that, So those would now not be treated as an absolute, But then when it comes to other things, like salvation is found in no one else but in Jesus Christ. That's a capital T. There's truth. That's not up for negotiation. So now what I want to do is I want to explain that to my kids, and then I want them to learn how to live that out, so that it's not just head knowledge, it's also heart experience. And so we've ventured to go on mission trips and stuff like that with our kids, and those are all little things that are part of their discovery. We've invited them, here at the church to be very involved, and again, bragging, pat on the back, they're all involved, and that doesn't mean that it's without questions, but I think it's a way for them to experience their faith and not just watch me do it from a stage. And then obviously, whether you work in a factory, whether you are a trucker, whether you are whatever job, integrity. What you are at your home is what you must be everywhere.
For sure.
And I think that when we expose ourselves in that way, and if we're dishonest in our character, I don't think the words we say will matter much. Yeah. And so I think that character and that integrity is absolutely vital. And this goes back, and I think Quentin mentioned it before, when you fail, then you need to apologize, and you need to let them know, hey, I really blew it. I said something to that cashier that I should not have said, and I'm embarrassed that I did it, and I'm going to go make it right, but that they don't just like, I'm justified because I'm an adult. And so all of those things are important aspects to developing their faith in their other areas of development. So,
yeah, and maybe this thing that I have just observed and learned isn't necessarily just for preteens, but I think it's something that has really been close to my heart in the last couple months. As we asked before, like a good definition of fatherhood, and there's many that we could give, but I think that there's 3 P's that really sum up what a dad is. A dad is often a provider, a dad is often a protector, and a dad is a priest. And then we that word priest is something that we're like, man, what does he mean with that? A priest in the Bible is an interceder. He's the mediator. He's the one that stands between his people and God. And we as fathers have the privilege to be priests to our families. Our family has had a very rough year, and I know some of you know some of the things that we've struggled with. We've had loss. In the last month, we've lost a family friend, and he wasn't that old. And so a lot of our boys have been asking a lot of these questions around eternity. We buried our family dog last week. Extremely hard for parents as well. I'm kind of wondering, what am I more sad about? Am I more sad about losing our dog, or am I more sad about watching our boys kind of just wrestle with it? And the privilege that we have as a dad is to lead that journey. And that is a privilege. It is terrifying. We don't know how to do it properly, but it is a privilege. And, and one of the things that I've learned is that if a child asks a question, he's ready for the answer. And I'm not saying that you give the whole answer, but, for example, one of my sons, he was reading his Bible earnestly, and he was like, I can't find a single verse that will say whether or not Sky will be in heaven or not. And it breaks my heart as a dad, but the priest in that situation gives pastoral care to the son.
For sure.
Where, we kind of, and you don't need a pat answer at that time. You need to care for your child. And you do all of that while kind of struggling with some of these things yourself. And so it hopefully, and I'm able to see some of the fruit of some of the parenting, some of the mistakes I've made. But my hope is that when my boys watch me and my wife Christina, she's an amazing mother as well, that they'll see how to also lead their families through these discussions, and that my boys will be priests of their family when they grow up.
Definitely. I know when I was a teen, I always appreciated my parents just always being there. They were always available. And I knew that they were always available. And I think too, like our curriculum, it always tells us that parents, you're the number one influence in your child's life, even if it doesn't seem like it. Even in their teenage years, like you are their number one influence. Your opinion, your influence is going to matter in their life, in their decisions. So don't take that lightly. Yeah. Well, to wrap up, we're almost at our end here. I just want to ask you as dads, what are you doing in your own life to care for yourself so that you can pour into your family? I know taking care of yourself is a big deal so that you can pour into your family. So what are some things that you guys do, and to give maybe even tips to the dads out there too who are looking to kind of boost themselves too?
I think that surrounding myself with people, and I know like with the life group that for our family has been really such a huge deal because I have people that are holding me accountable and pouring into me, keeping check, like saying, "Oh, I've noticed you've been kind of off a little bit. Is something going on?" So, and sometimes I don't even realize it, right? Like sometimes life, especially during this difficult season, sometimes you neglect certain areas of your life so that you can be in survival mode in the other areas. And so, making sure that you have people in your life that pour into you, and for no other reason but to make you feel like, yeah, I'm not doing this alone. But to have people pour into you, and I think that just making sure that, that is in check. I think that as a father, I think that that's very important. Whether that means having a mentor that takes you out every once in a while, someone who's actively praying for you and investing into you, I think that that is very vital.
For sure.
One thing I have been doing already for a few years, and that's just continued learning, through courses, through schooling. And I think that has been fun because it has introduced me to obviously topics and subjects and things like that that I can now have conversations with my kids on. The other one spiritually is just learning how to rest and Sabbath, and and then also with that very, very intentionally. I'm not a high exercise guy, but walking, doing minor exercises, making sure that I stay semi-fit, and then also just alone time during some of these lockdowns. I just came to realize that our home was no longer home. It was now school and office, multiple workplace, travel agency, insurance, all kinds of things, and then on top of all of that, we're trying to gather as a family. And so finding time to rest, and also I think parenting, our children and sending them to go to places where they are alone. And so those are just little things like, learning, exercising, and then rest.
Nice.
Important. I think for me, there's two things that are very important for me to stay healthy. Number one is that rest and that alone time. So my kind of happiest place is to be on my boat and fishing, or sometimes just getting my hooks wet. That is a recharging. And for the longest time, I sometimes felt guilty by taking time to recharge, because you're like, we got so much things to do. My family needs me. But one of the things that Christina has done is she sees the value in it, and she blesses me to make sure that I take time to recharge. And the second one is, and this is a truth that I would really encourage fathers. I know that some of your marriages may be struggling, But I find when my relationship with Christina and we are in a good place, we're connecting, we enjoy spending time together. If that is good, I think come what may in life, it's not a big deal. I say that kind of obviously there are hardships in life, but when we as fathers are connecting with our wives and there's that sweet connection and we're having fun together, that kind of helps you do anything, and it helps you be a dad, it helps you be better at your job. And so a lot of these advice things, sometimes we look at how to, and we kind of give a list of tasks to do if we want to be a better dad. But sometimes the path to being a better dad or some of these things is through those character things and through those relationships. So another thing is we need to be people that develop our own faith. And I say that as a pastor. I say that as somebody that teaches and is a Christian for a living. I know it sounds really crass to say it like that, but sometimes that's how I feel, that my faith is on display so that other people can learn from it. And there is often a temptation to live in a certain way so I can teach others. But we need to have a faith where it is mine, it is my relationship with Jesus Christ, and I am not living my Christian life so that other people can learn from it. I'm living my Christian life so that I'm in a right place with God. And so I guess that's kind of 3 points, but if those 3 things are happening, I find myself in a much healthier place.
Nice. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time, being willing to talk to our dads out there and even to the moms who are listening too. So I thought I would take my hand at a dad joke, even though I'm not a dad, and I'll see how it lands for you guys. I had to write it down because I'm not a dad, obviously. What did the police officer say to his belly button? You're under the vest. Get it? You're under arrest. Yeah. Okay. Thanks again for joining us. That wraps up episode 3 of the Dear Run Parents podcast, Refocus. I hope you took away some awesome truths in that. Dads, we need you. We need you to be in the role that you are and to embrace that role. And thank you, dads, for what you do. It is Father's Day on Sunday, and you know what? We celebrate you, and we're just so thankful for you and the roles that you play in your children's lives. Well, stay tuned as there are more episodes to come, and thank you again for listening, and we hope that blessed you today.